The Life and Sad Ending of Joe Diffie. Joe Diffie was born Joe Logan Diffie on December 28, 1958, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, U.S. Joe Diffie was born into a musical family in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in 1958. His first musical performance came at age 14 when he performed in his Aunt Dawn Anita's country music band. Diffie's father, Joe R., played guitar and banjo, and his mother sang. Following in his mother's footsteps, Diffie began to sing at an early age, often listening to the albums in his father's record collection. Diffie has said that his mom and dad claimed that could sing harmony when was 3 years old. His family moved to San Antonio, Texas, while he was in the first grade, and subsequently to Washington, where he attended 4th and 5th grades. Later, he moved to Wisconsin for the years he was in 6th grade through his second year of high school, and back to Oklahoma, where he attended high school in Velma. In his last 2 years in high school, Diffie played football, baseball, and golf in addition to running track. In his senior year, he was recognized as best all-around male athlete. After graduating, he attended Cameron University in Lawton, Oklahoma. Although he initially earned credits toward medical school, he decided against a medical profession after marrying for the first time in 1977 and ultimately dropped out before graduation. Diffie first worked in oil fields, then drove a truck that pumped concrete in the oil field in Alice, Texas, before he moved back to Duncan to work in a foundry. During this period, he worked as a musician on the side, first in a gospel group called Higher Purpose, and then in a bluegrass band called Special Edition. Diffie then built a recording studio, began touring with Special Edition in adjacent states, and sent demonstration recordings to publishers in Nashville. Hank Thompson recorded Diffie's Love on the Rocks, and Randy Travis put one of Diffie's songs on hold, but ultimately did not record it. After the foundry closed in 1986, Diffie declared bankruptcy and sold the studio out of financial necessity. He also divorced his wife, who left with their 2 children. Diffie spent several months in a state of depression before deciding to move to Nashville, Tennessee. By mid-1989, he quit working at the company to record demos full-time. Diffie also met Debbie, who later became his second wife. That same year, Diffie was contacted by Bob Montgomery, a songwriter and record producer known for working with Buddy Holly. Montgomery, who was then the vice president of A&R at Epic Records, said that he wanted to sign Diffie to a contract with the label, but had to put the singer on hold for a year. In the meantime, Holly Dunn released There Goes My Heart Again, which Diffie co-wrote and sang the backing vocals. Following this song's chart success, Diffie signed with Epic in early 1990. The label released Diffie's debut album, 1,000 Winding Roads, at the end of 1990, with Montgomery and Johnny Slate as producers. Its first single, Home, reached the top of the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. The song also reached #1 on the country music charts published by Radio and Records and Gavin Report, making him the first country music artist to have a #1 debut single on all 3 charts. Diffie co-wrote the album's second and fourth releases, If You Want Me To and New Way. Both peaked at #2 on Billboard and the former reached #1 on the RPM country music charts in Canada. Between these 2 songs, If the Devil Danced became Diffie's second Billboard #1. The album itself peaked at #23 on Top Country Albums. Diffie also performed his first concerts in late 1990, touring with George Strait and Steve Wariner. That same year, Cashbox named him Male Vocalist of the Year. In 1991, Diffie co-wrote the tracks Livin' on What's Left of Your Love and Memory Lane on label mate Keith Palmer's debut album. Diffie's second album, titled Regular Joe, was released in 1992 and was certified gold by the Recording Industry Association of America. The first two singles from the album both peaked at number 5 on Billboard, Is It Cold in Here and Ships That Don't Come In, with the latter reaching number 1 on radio and records. Ships That Don't Come In was co-written by Dave Gibson, also recording on Epic at the time as a member of the Gibson-Miller Band. The album's third single, Next Thing Smokin', made its chart debut 1 month before Not Too Much to Ask, a duet that Diffie recorded with Mary Chapin Carpenter for her album Come On Come On. Both of these songs made the country top 20, respectively reaching 16 and 15, and the duet was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Country Collaboration with Vocals at the 35th Grammy Awards in 1993. The final single from Regular Joe was Startin' Over Blues, which peaked at number 41. Also included on the album was the ballad Goodnight Sweetheart, later a top 10 country hit in 1996 for David Kirsch. The album was highly appreciated by critics. Honky Tonk Attitude in 1993 shipped 1 million copies in the United States and was certified platinum. The first 3 singles from the album all reached the top 10 on the country singles charts. John Deere Green also accounted for Diffie's first appearance on the Billboard Hot 100, where it peaked at number 69. In My Own Backyard, the last release from Honky Tonk Attitude, reached number 19 on the country charts. Also in 1993, Diffie was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry. Several other artists and he won that year's Country Music Association Award for Vocal Event of the Year, for their guest vocals on George Jonas' I Don't Need Your Rockin' Chair. Tim McGraw also included 2 of Diffie's songs on his 1993 debut album, another version of Memory Lane, which he released as a single, and Tears in the Rain. Third Rock from the Sun was Diffie's highest charting top country album, as well as his second consecutive platinum album. It was also the first album that he co-produced, doing so with Johnny Slate. The album included 2 consecutive number 1 singles in its title track and in Pickup Man. The latter of those 2 songs was Diffie's longest-lasting number 1, at 4 weeks. Both songs also entered the Hot 100, respectively peaking at 84 and 60. In 2005, Pickup Man was repurposed by the Applebee's restaurant chain for use in its television commercials. The album's next single, So Help Me Girl, peaked at number 2 on the country charts and 84 on the pop charts, in addition to topping the RPM country charts. In mid-1995, he recorded the title track for Columbia Records' Runnin' Wide Open, an album comprising NASCAR-themed songs by various artists. He issued 2 albums later in the year. The first was a Christmas project titled Mr. Christmas, which comprised covers of traditional Christmas songs, as well as newly written songs. His other release that year was the studio album Life's So Funny. It was led off by Bigger Than the Beatles, the last number 1 single of his career. The album's other 2 singles were Country and Whole Lotta Gone, both of which peaked at 23 on the country music charts in 1996. Twice Upon a Time followed in 1997. Its singles all failed to make the top 10 on the country charts, with Lead Off This As Your Brain reaching number 25, followed by Something Like This at number 40 and The Promised Land at number 61, the lowest peaking single of his career. In mid-1998, Epic Records released Diffie's Greatest Hits package, which featured 3 new cuts. Among these were Texas Size Heartache, and its B-side, Poor Me, which respectively reached numbers 4 and 43 on the country charts. At the end of the year, Diffie recorded a cover of Charlie Ricks' Behind Closed Doors for the multiple artist album A Tribute to Tradition on Columbia Records. Diffie's version of the song peaked at number 64 based on unsolicited airplay. He also contributed to another cut on that album, Same Old Train, which featured Marty Stewart and 11 other country music singers. This song peaked at 59 on the country charts and won the 1999 Grammy Award for Best Country Collaboration with vocals for all artists involved. His final album for Epic Records, titled A Night to Remember, was released in 1999. Diffie worked with producers Don Cook and Lonnie Wilson, a friend of Diffie's who worked primarily as a session drummer and songwriter and formerly fronted the band Bandana. After this song came The Quittin' Kind and It's Always Somethin', which respectively reached 21 and 5 on the country charts, and 90 and 57 on the Hot 100. The latter spent 37 weeks on the country music charts, the longest chart run achieved by any of his singles. In 2001, Sony Nashville transferred Diffie from its Epic division to the Monument Records division due to a corporate decision that Epic had too many artists and Monument had too few. Cook and Wilson also produced his only album for Monument, which was titled In Another World. Regarding this album, Diffie told Billboard that its material had a common theme of love and that he wanted to create a more contemporary sound through the production. The album's title track peaked at number 10 on the country charts and number 66 on the Hot 100. Only one other single was released from the album, This Pretender, which failed to make the country music top 40. After Monument closed its Nashville branch, Diffie began touring with Mark Chesnutt and Tracy Lawrence on the Rockin' Roadhouse Tour, which began in 2002. That same year, Diffie was inducted into the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame. Diffie signed to the independent Broken Bow Records in 2003. His only album for the label was Tougher Than Nails, which Wilson and he produced with Buddy Cannon. It included 5 songs that Diffie co-wrote, as well as a duet with George Jones entitled What Would Waylon Do? Tougher Than Nails produced a top 20 hit in its title track, followed by If I Could Only Bring You Back, which peaked at number 50 and spent only 8 weeks on the charts. This latter song was also his last charting single. In 2005, Joe D. Messina released My Give a Damn's Busted, which Diffie co-wrote and originally recorded on In Another World. Her version of the song, included on her album Delicious Surprise, was a number 1 single that year. After leaving Broken Bow, Diffie continued to tour, primarily playing smaller venues and county fairs. In 2007, he joined with Lone Star, Charlie Daniels, and Craig Morgan to perform a benefit concert for Sergeant Kevin Downs, a soldier who was severely wounded in Iraq. In 2008, Diffie compiled and released a live album, and he signed to Rounder Records later in that year. Rounder released an album called The Ultimate Collection, which comprised re-recordings of his hits for Epic. His next project for Rounder, Homecoming, the Bluegrass album, was released on October 26, 2010. It includes collaborations with the Grascals, Rhonda Vincent, and other bluegrass artists. Diffie toured at various county fairs in August 2010 in support of it. He co-produced the album with Luke Wooten and included on it the song Tennessee Tea, which Diffie originally recorded while he was in Special Edition. In late 2012, Jason Aldean recorded the song 1994, co-written by Thomas Rhett, Luke Laird, and Barry Dean. The song, which was released in February 2013 as the third single from Aldean's album Night Train, name-drops Diffie and incorporates several of his song titles into the lyrics. Later in the year, Diffie collaborated with Aaron Tippin and Sammy Kershaw on the album All in the Same Boat and cut the single Girl Riding Shotgun with Dee Thrash of the Jaga Boys. This was followed in 2019 by a vinyl album called Joe Diffie. In personal life, Diffie was married 4 times. His first wife was Janice Parker, whom he married while in college. The couple had 2 children, Parker and Kara, then divorced in 1986. Parker Diffie later worked as Diffie's on-road manager in the mid-2000s, and in mid-2010, he and Kara auditioned for American Idol. 2 years after divorcing Janice, Diffie married Debbie Jones, a nurse technician. They had two sons, Drew and Tyler, the latter of whom was born with Down syndrome and nearly died in 1991 following complications from a tonsillectomy. In his book, Miracle, Bobby Allison and the Saga of the Alabama Gang, author Peter Gollenbach described the origins of Diffie's 1993-94 love affair with Liz Allison, widow of Davy Allison. In 2000, Diffie married Teresa, whom he met at a concert, at the Opryland Hotel in Nashville. They have one daughter, Kylie, born in 2004. The couple divorced in 2017. Diffie married Tara Turpinning at the Musicians Hall of Fame in Nashville in 2018. Sadly, on March 27, 2020, Diffie announced that he tested positive for coronavirus in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2 days later, on March 29, he died in Nashville at the age of 61 from complications of the virus.